Imagine waiting 50 years just to see your team lift a trophy again. The Milwaukee Bucks were forgotten by the league, ignored by free agents, and mocked for daring to dream they could ever win it all. And then in 2021, all that heartbreak disappeared because of one skinny kid from Greece. The same kid every big market team tried to steal, the same kid they said would never get it done in Milwaukee. But that night, he stood at center court, 50 points on the board, and an entire city on its feet. This wasn't just a championship, it was a promise kept, a city reborn, and the night Giannis Antetokounmpo became immortal. But the way he got there, well, it shouldn't have been possible.
With the 15th pick, the Milwaukee Bucks select.
Before Giannis was the Greek freak, he was just a skinny kid growing up in a rough neighborhood. His parents were Nigerian immigrants, working whatever jobs they could find just to keep food on the table. Some days, Giannis and his brother would share a single pair of shoes, taking turns playing basketball at a park that barely had a net.
We didn't have a lot of money, but we had a lot of happiness.
And when he wasn't on the court, he was hustling in the streets.
What were you selling?
We were used to sell glasses, watches, CDs, DVDs.
You must be a pretty good salesman.
I was the best.
He didn't even pick up a basketball until he was 12 years old. He was awkward and clumsy. Nobody, not even him, had any idea he'd become something special. But he had one thing most kids didn't. He wanted it more than anyone. He would sneak into gyms at night, practicing his moves alone until security kicked him out. He'd run to the arena and run back home because he didn't have money for the bus. And then eventually, the world caught notice. By 17 years old, scouts were whispering about a 6'9" kid from Greece who could handle the ball like a guard. And in 2013, the Milwaukee Bucks took a chance. They drafted this raw teenager that nobody could even pronounce his last name.
Antetokounmpo.
I mean, really, nobody could say it, but the Bucks were betting that one day everyone would know that name. And they were right, but back then, he was just a kid who needed time, and a small market team that was desperate enough to give it to him.
What is your goal for your career?
I want to be an NBA player.
When Giannis first touched down in Milwaukee, he looked like a kid who'd snuck into the league with a fake ID. He stood at 6'9", but all arms and legs, he was barely 190 pounds soaking wet. And his jersey hung off his shoulders like a curtain. And on the court, it was the same story. Raw, clumsy, and awkward, he'd airball free throws so badly they'd land in the laps of the front row. Some nights he'd get pushed around like a twig by guys twice his size, but then there'd be that one play.
Behind the back, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and only watch.
A coast-to-coast Euro step, a block where his arms seemed to stretch forever, a glimpse of what could be if he figured it out. And Milwaukee held on to those glimpses like lifelines. This was a franchise nobody wanted to play for. They hadn't been relevant since Kareem. But now they had this kid who showed up to games, grinning ear to ear, waving to fans like he was just happy to be there. And the city loved him for it. They started calling him the Greek Freak, partly because nobody could say his last name, but mostly because nobody had ever seen anything like him. Season by season, the kid they'd taken a gamble on started to transform. He lived in the weight room, added muscle, and grew another inch. His rookie numbers were nothing special, but the flashes got brighter. Putback dunks that made SportsCenter, blocks that seemed to break physics.
Turner leaves it for Giannis. Out.
By his third season, he was named the most improved player. That same goofy kid was now an all-star starter, throwing down dunks on 7-footers who used to shove him to the ground. But for all the highlights, the Bucks were still stuck in the mud. They were firing coaches, shuffling around the roster, but the one thing that never changed was Giannis. Every summer, he'd come back stronger, hungrier, and a little more unstoppable. And by 2017, it finally felt real. Giannis was different now, no longer that skinny kid, he was a 6'11" freight train in the open court. A point forward who could handle the ball like a guard, block shots like a center, and dunk on anybody standing in his way. And for the first time in a long time, the Bucks had something that felt dangerous. He was about to get his first real taste of the playoffs, and the rest of the world was about to see if this raw gamble from Greece really was ready to carry an entire city on his back.
Hopefully, in the playoffs, we're going to do our best, and we're going to be ready for our opponent.
From the moment the playoffs tipped off, you could feel it, Milwaukee was hungry. The Raptors were the battle-tested favorites in the first round. The Bucks were just a bunch of kids riding Giannis's fearless energy. And in Game 1, he came out swinging, dunking over everybody, flying in for chase down blocks, putting the league on notice. But the deeper they got, the more the cracks showed. Toronto started to clog the paint, daring him to shoot, and when the game slowed down, the Bucks ran out of answers. They pushed it to 6 games, but when it mattered most, experience prevailed. Giannis left the floor with his first real taste of playoff heartbreak, and each spring after that, it was the same story. A new season, a stronger Giannis, and the same brutal ending. In 2018, they ran into Boston, another chance to prove that they were ready. But when the lights got the brightest, the Bucks folded. By 2019, he looked unstoppable, winning his first MVP, the best record in the league. The Bucks steamrolled through the East, went up 2-0 on Kawhi and the Raptors, just 2 games away from the finals. And then the wall hit them again and again, 4 straight losses, the season was over. When the bubble came in 2020, it got even worse. Miami did the same thing, sending the Bucks home in 5, but this time there was no excuses. By then, everybody was ready for him to run, but Giannis doubled down. He signed the biggest contract in NBA history at the time. The heartbreak years were over. It was officially now or never. By 2021, the Bucks pushed all of their chips into the middle. They traded half of their future for Drew Holiday, the missing piece. Middleton was finally ready to be a true co-star, and Giannis, well, he was in the middle of his prime. Now, the regular season was far from perfect. They sacrificed wins to experiment to get the scars that would matter in June. Because they didn't care about looking pretty in January, they cared about being ready when it counted. And when the playoffs rolled around, this team was ready. First up was Miami, the same team that humiliated them in the bubble, but this time it was a bloodbath. They steamrolled the Heat in 4 straight, a clean sweep, riding the momentum into the second round. Next up was Brooklyn, the unstoppable super team everyone thought would end their dream. And for 7 games straight, it was a fight. Giannis went toe-to-toe with KD, one of the greatest duels the league has ever seen, and in Game 7, KD almost did the impossible. The Slim Reaper rose up and buried a jumper that looked like the dagger, but his foot was just barely on the line. It was a 2 instead of a 3, the game went into overtime, and the Bucks survived. Then came Atlanta, the only thing standing in between Giannis and his first NBA Finals. But sometimes, your biggest test isn't an opponent, it's your own body. In Game 4, one freakish play, Giannis goes up for a block and lands wrong. His knee bends the way knees just aren't supposed to bend. And an entire city was holding its breath. Nobody knew if he'd even walk again that season, let alone play, but somehow, 2 games later, there he was. He was back, and he was a man on a mission. The Bucks closed out the Hawks on the road, and when the final buzzer sounded, it hit everybody all at once. For the first time in 50 years, Milwaukee was heading back to the finals. For the city, it felt like a dream. All those heartbreak years, all the injuries, all the rumors, everything washed away. And for Giannis, it was the chance he'd fought for since the days he used to run to practice because he couldn't afford the bus. The chance to do what everyone said was impossible, bring a title back to a city nobody believed in. It was the chance to become a legend. But the funny thing about destiny, well, it doesn't always come easy. Being just 4 wins away from history, they found themselves up against a fearless Phoenix Suns squad. Chris Paul was desperate for his first ring. Devin Booker was the young assassin, a team that believed they were meant to lift that trophy just as badly as the Bucks. So when the ball tipped off in Game 1, it wasn't just 2 teams playing basketball, it was a clash of belief. And right away, Phoenix landed the first punch. Chris Paul started off this series on fire, carving on Milwaukee's defense like he'd been waiting for this moment his entire career. Devin Booker couldn't miss. It felt like every mid-range jumper he tossed up was a dagger straight into the Bucks' heart. And before Milwaukee could even blink, they were down 0-2. And that dream of winning a championship was suddenly on life support. The doubt started to creep in, not just for the team, but for every fan who waited 50 years for this moment. But when the series shifted back to Milwaukee, everything changed. Game 3 was a statement. Giannis walked into the arena and put the entire weight of the franchise on his shoulders. shoulders. He dropped 41 points, attacking the paint like it belonged to him and him alone. Every time Phoenix made a push, he answered with a spin move, a Euro step, or a thunderous dunk that rattled the rafters. It wasn't just the points, it was the message that came with him. Then came Game 4, the night he gave us one of the greatest defensive plays in NBA Finals history. Late in the fourth quarter, the Suns ran a perfect pick and roll. Devin Booker lobs it up to DeAndre Ayton, an easy alley-oop to tie the game. Except Giannis wasn't having any of it. He turned midair, met Ayton at the rim, and blocked it clean. It didn't even look human, like his arm stretched twice the length for that one moment. The crowd lost its mind. That single block didn't just save the game, it swung the entire series. Now, Game 5 was maybe the wildest of them all. In Phoenix, the Suns came out throwing haymakers. Booker dropped 40, but Milwaukee kept punching back. And with seconds left on the clock, Devin Booker drove the lane. The Suns were just one bucket away from the league, and Drew Holiday ripped the ball right out of his hands. It was one of the gutsiest defensive plays you will ever see. He sprinted down the court with Giannis trailing, tossed up a lob that seemed too high, but not for the Greek freak. Giannis caught it with one hand, threw it down, and nearly brought the roof down with him. The Valley-oop was one steal, one dunk, and one dagger to the Suns' hopes. And then came Game 6, the day our story comes to an end. 50 years of waiting, all building up to one night, and right from the opening tip, you could tell Giannis wasn't leaving anything to chance. He played like a man possessed. He attacked the rim over and over, he bullied Ayton every possession, and swat shots that looked like easy layups for Phoenix. Every time the Suns made a run, Giannis snatched the momentum right back. In the free throws, the part of his game everyone mocked, they fell one after the other. 17 of 19, one of the biggest nights of his life. And when the final buzzer sounded, the scoreboard said it all. 50 points, one of the greatest closeout performances the game of basketball had ever seen. After all the heartbreak, all the doubt, all the nights of people who said he couldn't do it, Giannis did it his way. No super teams, no shortcuts, and that night, he didn't just win a ring. Giannis Antetokounmpo became immortal. Now, Giannis didn't just rewrite what it means to win, he changed what it means to belong. In a league built on big cities and brighter lights, he turned Milwaukee into a destination, not because it was easy, but because it was his. He showed every kid who's been overlooked, counted out, or told to run away that sometimes the right place is worth fighting for. That greatness isn't always found in the biggest markets or the biggest headlines. Sometimes it's built quietly in the shadows. In empty gyms after midnight, brick by brick, until one night lights up an entire city. When people talk about what Giannis did, they'll remember the blocks, the dunks, the 50 points, but what they should remember is the promise behind all of it. You don't have to chase somebody else's legacy. In fact, you can build your own.